Good morning, interwebs. Well, here we are, and I am starting a new video, and I look like shit. Forgive me for looking horrible. Anyway, so, outside of my usual commentary on politics and social commentary and other things, I am an avid gamer. So today's topic is going to address two controversies in the gaming world which have gotten a lot of attention, which kind of piss me off and kind of irritate me. So, the two of them are No Man's Sky, a procedurally generated space exploration game, and Ark Scorched Earth, which is paid DLC content on an early access game on Steam platform. So the first one we're going to cover is Ark. Now, to explain Ark to anybody who has never video gamed or doesn't know what type of game it is, basically imagine being plunked down on an island where you have to survive, and that island is populated with dinosaurs. That's the basic fundamental. It is a survival game. It is possibly one of the most successful early access games ever presented on Steam. It's basically running like a launch title. It has a huge amount of content. From the day the game was launched, it launched with a dev kit, which allows people to create custom maps, custom clothing, custom everything. There's currently 60 plus pages of mods sitting on the Steam store page. All of this free, mind you, for a $20 game. For $20, you're getting the content of a AAA title in early access. Now, this week, they offered paid DLC. The paid DLC is called Scorched Earth. It's basically an island-sized desert biome. It's basically the size of the core game for $20. Now, the big controversy going on around this is as well, how can you charge DLC in an early access game? Well, here's the thing. I went through the ELAU for Steam's early access games. There's nothing in there that states that you cannot charge DLC. They do, however, insist that anything that you charge on the Steam platform gets charged the same price across any other platform. So Galaxy of Games, G2A, Amazon, all has to be priced the same way if you're going to offer it on individual platforms. Now, the big issue is, oh well, how dare they charge me $20 DLC for a game that I already paid for in early access? Well, let's do a little, informative math here. The average Steam user has 300 hours of play in a game. Now, I personally have averaged almost 800. There has not been a launch game, a AAA completed game title, in the last 5 years that I have played that much. And I'm a pretty avid gamer. When it comes down to games, I'm on some of the best AAA titles. I've yet to play a game that long. Now let's do the math. The average AAA movie costs you $17 in America. Overseas it might vary based on, currency rates and stuff. But in America it's $17. That's for an average 2-hour game. So let's do some math. The average Steam user plays 300 hours of this game. Divide that by 2 for 2 hours of a movie, and you get 150 hours. Now you take that and you multiply it by $17, and you get $2,550. $2,550 for 300 hours of movies. But for $20, you got the same amount of enjoyment out of a game. So now it comes down to the question of well, why is the DLC priced $20 and why does people who own the game have to buy it? Well, first of all, this content was designed by a separate team inside the developer. Okay? Whether you believe that or not, it's fact. A separate team worked on this outside of the existing development for the game, and people need to realize a game studio doesn't just develop one game. If they did, they'd all be bankrupt. Okay? So is this being used possibly as a revenue stream to develop other things? Probably. But don't you think you should support a team that has given you this much enjoyment out of a game? That has given you so much free content modding tools. The game's longevity is infinite. Anybody can host a server with it with their own rule set. PvP, player versus environment, player versus player, single player, multiplayer. It's all there. And this is something that irritates me, because there's this growing sense, just in terms of humanity, that everything should be free. That content providers shouldn't have the balls to charge you for something that they invested time and money in to create for you. And now they have the gall to charge you something, and you're mad? Let me give you a better, a better idea of what this is like from my perspective. Okay, I build a house out of plywood. I give you the house for $20, with the guarantee that the walls, the windows, the roof, the floor will chronically be upgraded as time goes on, for free. For free. Okay? The house is wired to the public power grid. Okay? So after a year, I decide, well, I want to upgrade your house and take it off the power grid. So I'm going to charge you $20 for a solar panel system. And you tell me, go fuck myself. Wait. I'm offering you something for a minimal fee after I've given you a year worth of upgrades to that house, and you're telling me to go fuck myself? See, this is the mentality that I see going on, not just in the gaming community, but in the world in general. This gimme mentality. And I just don't understand it. Now, part of this, especially in the gaming, is to be blamed on free-to-play. Free-to-play launched with this a la carte idea where they give you a developed game, and anything else they do with it, they're going to charge you piecemeal for. Or bonuses in leveling, clothing, armor, they charge you, bits and pieces on. Now, to a greater or lesser extent, this has been a failure, but there have been some standout games that have done exceptionally well in the free-to-play market. They don't give anybody an unfair advantage. But the problem is free-to-play kind of gave a lot of people this idea, well, if I pay for something, I get better. But then it also gave this people idea, well, I should get more and more and more for free. I should get a finished game for free. I should get expansions for free. I should get everything for free. Last time I checked, game devs have families and lives outside of game development that they have to pay for. They have bills just like you and me. Well, most of us, seeing as some of you still live in your parents' basement and suck off the family teat, but, who am I to judge, right? So in other words, this controversy is just crap. Complete crap. And just as a reminder, this DLC is a voluntary purchase. You do not need it to play the base game. And you won't need it to play any further additions to the game. So, controversy nullified. Now we're on to the other big one. And this one's a doozy. No Man's Sky, developed by a 15-person indie team, was to be a procedurally generated open-world exploration game. Now, the real controversy with this is, throughout its development cycle and its pre-launch hype, very little information was given away on the game. The dev, Sean Murray, was very cryptic about what you could do in the game, and the play demo, and this is the wording that, you need to pay attention to, play demo, it seemed to offer a lot. Playable factions, space combat, varied fauna and flora on every world that you visit, a deep, meaningful progression system as you head towards the center of the galaxy. So, some people were starting to get suspicious, because when you asked the lead dev about multiplayer, you kind of got, well, you can see people, and people started getting suspicious. But, as gamers, when we see something that pushes the cusp of technology and the potential of gaming, I mean, procedural generation has had a very rocky history in gaming. One of the standout examples was a game called Spore. which gave you procedurally generated creatures, procedurally generated worlds. It was, you know, it was the stepping stones of a technology that could transform gaming, period. So, as time went on, we were getting more and more suspicious of what this game was going to offer and whether or not it was actually going to launch with everything that they promised. But a lot of us jumped on the bandwagon, notably hype-based. Now, the problem with hype is you tend to hear things that were never said. This has happened on other games, most notably Destiny, which everybody saw as this huge space MMO, and it turned out was basically a sci-fi themed space shooter that kind of ripped off a lot of ideas from a multiplayer game called Warframe. So, launch comes around. And as people are playing the game, we're starting to realize there's nothing in here that was promised. And I mean nothing. It runs like a tech demo. It had repeated issues with crashing, wipes, disappearing saves on both consoles and PC. Okay, indie team, 15 people, give them a little bit of credit. Here's the thing, though. As we explored, as we delved further into the game, there was no progression system. There were no alliance systems. There was no trade in-game. There was no variety whatsoever to any of the flora and fauna. Everywhere you went, it was kind of the same. The ship. Your ship was unnameable. It's uncustomizable. There is no multiplayer. Their concept of multiplayer is basically having a source encyclopedia where you discover something, you name it, and you upload it, and other people can find it and it's named, but they never find you. Supposedly, 2 players were on the same planet and never saw each other, which gives rise to the fact that the game uses instancing technology. So then comes the whole idea of progressing towards the center of the universe, and here's the biggest, spoiler alert, letdown of the game. Once you get to the center of the galaxy, it starts you in another galaxy to do the same thing all over again. Alright, so now the question begs, where was that content that people were playing in the demos for game conventions and publicity? Well, it turns out as people data mined the game, that turned out to be a scripted sequence. A scripted, like 25-30 minute sequence that developers used to publicize the game. Now, the actual lead developer of the game, Sean Murray, has basically been communication silence since the launch of the game. They offer the promise of future DLC. Is it going to happen? Who knows? The game has lost something around 90% of its user base over the course of a week. Now, the real question is, do gamers have the right to be outraged? Yes, absolutely. What this looks like, to me personally, is fraud. And this is where the difference between the internet outrage between Ark and No Man's Sky pale in comparison. Because what was committed, in my eyes, was fraud. Basically, it's like the people that promise you, property shares in a high-end community, and you end up in the middle of a swamp. That's what it feels like, because the game has no replayability. I've played maybe about 10 hours and just put it aside, because it feels like a $20 indie game title. That's the way it feels. And the modding community has started to do things with it that kind of improve the game, but they're not going to fix the huge content hole that is in the game. And this is where I personally am disappointed, because you can't really get a refund on the game now. Now, if people have been playing the game and you're getting, 20 to 30 hours worth of enjoyment out of the game, technically, do you qualify for a refund? That's arguable. But, on the flip side, where's a class action lawsuit against Hello Games and Sony for perpetuating what basically amounts to a lie? It's like saying, hey, this is going to cure cancer, and then you get it, and all it does is cure acne. That's what it comes off as. And my question is why isn't there more rage in the gaming community? Why isn't there a lot more rage directed at Sony, the publisher of the game? I mean, how could you sit there and advertise the game as they were, knowing, and they had to have known, Sony isn't a stupid studio. Sony has been at the game for over 20 years. They know when they have a turd on their hands. How could they sit there and their own people were playing this game at publicity events? How could you sit there, then go play the actual build that's being developed and go, oh yeah, we're going to launch this in a week, don't worry, we'll be fine. Now, if they had sat back and said, hey, look, the game is not ready. It's a 15-man team, they were under a deadline, they're not going to meet it, we're going to take a year off the promotion schedule, say, hey, look, you know, those of you that pre-ordered, we're going to give you something else in addition to what you were going to get. Give us 9 months to a year to finish the game. I don't think anybody would have been mad at them. Hello Games has been a really committed studio. They want to make this type of game. Yeah, we would have been fine with that. But here comes launch day. They delay it for, I think it was, what, 5 days? Claiming that they were working on a first-day patch that was going to fix problems with the game. The game comes out, it's buggy, it crashes, it doesn't run right on systems, it crashes and deletes content on console, which was the main platform that the game was developed for was consoles, most notably the PS4, which is Sony's flagship system. So, in the end, I want to know, why is there not more outrage towards No Man's Sky, yet there's this fuming, angry vitriol aimed at MindArc and Arc for a game that cost a third of the cost. No Man's Sky was a $60 launch game that has maybe 20 hours worth of content. Yet Arc has been averaging 300 to 500 hours of content per user, and they're charging another $20 for DLC non-contingent to the game. People are flaming them like crazy. So Internet Warriors, 1, get your facts straight, and 2, learn to manage your vitriol and your flaming and bitching for the right people. Because the thing with early access has given us access to games that most major gaming studios would have passed on. Warframe was passed on by many major studios. It's gone on to be one of the most successful free-to-play indie games ever. Arc was something that was shopped around to a number of studios that basically did, nobody's gonna play that, fuck you. Now here it is, the game has sold upwards of 30 million copies of the game, has a huge player base, huge fan base, content up the wazoo. Rocket League, this tiny little, basically racing with soccer game, this tiny little playing soccer with race car games. You know, it's like a toy, a child's dream. One of the most successful launch titles on Steam. Kerbal Space Program, one of the most amazing games if you're into science, exploration, NASA, building rockets and using, you know, actual fundamentals of gravity and orbit to launch vehicles into space and get to destinations. One of the best games for that. Again, an early access title that most AAA developers did this to. Because unless they see dollars up front from launching a game, they will not develop it. Now, does early access have its backs, you know, withdrawals and, you know, drawbacks? Yeah, of course. There have been a number of games that have come out that have died in development, have promised the world and given you nothing. But to Steam's, you know, benefit, they've changed their ELAU. They now warn people, do not promise stuff you don't plan to deliver. Do not plan to make a ton of money to fund your development while on early access. Don't deliver broken games. They've corrected this. They've made corrective steps to make it very clear to people that an early access game is what it is. It's an early access game. It is a base developed game with the idea that They're going to use their player base to not just generate income, but use that income to further develop the game, flesh it out, finish it, and make it a launch title. So again, temper your vitriol for the people who deserve it. Hello Games basically deserves to burn in fire for the bait and switch that they pulled on the gaming community. And frankly, Sony Games, just as culpable because they're the publisher. They let this steaming turd fly out to the masses. But gaming community should be the most angry, the most targeted. Never again should Hello Games be allowed to make, another game. I'm sorry. They deserve nobody's support. Unless in the next week we get a game that plays exactly like the scripted demo that developers and gamers and publicity people were allowed to play, they don't deserve any love from the gaming community ever again. I'm sorry. They don't. So, as a message to all gamers, be informed before you throw the flaming sticks of rage at people. Be informed, know what you're talking about, and most notably, don't offer your opinions on a game that you don't own and you don't play. Because that's the one thing that led me to make this video, was a good number of the people bitching about the Ark DLC were people that never bought the damn game. How can you comment on something that you don't own? That you've never participated in or enjoyed? How? So on that note, adios people.